I would make the case that Judd Apatow changed the genre of romantic comedy forever. In 2005, Mr. Apatow wrote and directed a movie called The 40-Year-Old Virgin, blending the raunchy humor of a late-night comedy with the heartwarming energy of a romantic comedy. 2 years later, in 2007, he wrote and directed a movie called Knocked Up, and 5 years after that, in 2012, he did the same for a movie called This Is 40. The first two aren't on Netflix, but the last one is, so why the hell not? The film starts off with a picture of a marriage on the rocks. The married couple in question consists of Pete, played by Paul Rudd, and Debbie, played by Leslie Mann. Shortly it is revealed that it is Debbie's birthday party and she is turning 38, when in reality, she is turning 40. What follows is a slice-of-life depiction of married life in the suburbs. Debbie runs a fashion boutique and Pete runs a record label. The record label is floundering and the boutique is ostensibly the victim of petty larceny courtesy of Megan Fox. To further their financial struggles, Pete is also lending a substantial amount of money to his father. While the exposition is being expositioned, we are also introduced to Pete and Debbie's children, played by Judd Apatow's real-life daughters. Apparently the stress of raising a couple of kids while living a reasonably affluent life in the suburbs is getting too much for the couple, and they opt to get baked in a hotel room as a treat to celebrate Debbie's 40th birthday. After this, the couple decide to make an attempt to bolster the strength of their marriage, but both fail to one degree or another. Pete fails to keep his promise to cease lending money to his father, and Debbie finds out she is pregnant and proceeds by bullying a 12-year-old instead of telling her husband. As is recommended for pregnant women, Debbie then decides to go clubbing with Megan Fox. In this nightclub, she's hit on by a hockey player. She is flattered, but turns the jock down and remains loyal to Pete. As the night comes to its conclusion, Debbie confronts Miss Fox in regards to the money that has gone missing from the boutique. But Miss Fox pins the blame on her coworker and her newly invented drug problem. Also, apparently, Megan Fox is a sex worker. Plot twists abound. The movie continues to highlight the ostensible struggles of parenting in suburbia before climaxing at Pete's birthday party. All of the characters finally voice their concerns with one another, and Pete overhears that Debbie is pregnant, causing him to hop on his bicycle and pedal real fast to escape the tense situation. He hits a car, Debbie finds him, the two make up, and everyone lives happily ever after. The first half of this story is quite good. It's a story about how relationships change over time as the people participating grow older. It's not a romantic comedy about young 20-somethings falling in love for the first time, but instead is about what happens to that couple a decade and a half later. This is far from a novel change-up in the genre, but This Is 40 executes quite well on this trope, at least in the early portion of the movie. The opening scene depicts the married couple having sex, and it's revealed that Pete took a Viagra before engaging in the act to bolster his performance, and Debbie is irritated at this. This opening sequence establishes the aforementioned distinction between the 20-somethings and the 40-somethings by establishing a problem that is really only relevant in the latter category. Their characters aren't concerned with going out and partying or anything like that, but rather waxing philosophically about the finer points of boner pills. The theme of getting older continues to play out during this early portion of the film, and that through line bolsters the overall narrative and serves to set the movie apart from similar works where the protagonists are younger. Not only is the early narrative reasonably well executed, but the comedic writing is also outstanding, as is to be expected from a Judd Apatow movie. The comedic dialogue is snappy and clever, with offbeat raunchiness that we have come to expect from the director, so audiences with a favorable view of Mr. Apatow's comedic stylings will not be let down when it comes to jokes. The film is shot well, not extraordinarily well, but the cinematography really understands the fundamentals. There is a consistent color palette throughout, and all the shots are framed reasonably well and so on, making this movie at least easy on the eyes. A final positive about This Is 40 is the casting. Leslie Mann as Debbie and Paul Rudd as Pete really knock it out of the park, bringing life to characters that could have just as easily been depicted as flat or uninteresting in the hands of other actors. The supporting cast is also solid enough, with Jason Segel bringing his small part to life with his depiction of a douchey workout bro. Megan Fox is also here and takes off her clothes at one point, so she has clearly exercised the full capacity of her acting capabilities. Finally, I would like to say that the daughters in this movie are Mr. Apatow's real-life progeny, and this is adorable. If said offspring are capable of giving a solid enough performance, I think that this choice of casting is always heartwarming, and gives any movie in which this convention takes place a significantly more personal touch. The second half of this movie kind of falls off narratively. At some point, the theme of getting older somewhat shifts from getting older to our parents suck. What could have been an interesting story about the struggles of keeping a long-lasting relationship alive changes into a story about blaming everything on one's parents. Instead of keeping the focal point more centered on Pete and Debbie, we transition to how both Pete's dad is a freeloader and Debbie's dad left her, and how that has affected the respective characters. This shift could have served to bolster the original theme if it was executed properly, but instead is just a shoddy thematic transition that somewhat loses the theme that was established in the beginning of the movie. Another personal gripe I have is just how annoyingly suburban all of the characters are. I understand that the movie is set in the suburbs, so it tracks that the characters would behave as such, but I feel like this could be accomplished in a way that doesn't have them constantly keeping up with the Joneses. That isn't to say that it's impossible to make a movie commenting on this facet of suburban America, but I feel like This Is 40 doesn't even realize that they are doing this. Debbie ostensibly had someone steal a large amount of money from her business, yet doesn't take any action for a significant amount of time. Pete's record company is failing miserably, yet he refuses to change any of his business practices. Despite all of this, they're still spending money as if they're the Rockefellers. I get that financial insecurity is somewhat part of the plot, but the characters don't seem to realize or even care that they're in a miserable fiscal state and continue to partake in their reasonably lavish lifestyle. While some might be able to suspend their disbelief in regards to this, such a thing makes the whole setting a bit unbelievable for my tastes. Worth your time, yada yada yada, subjective question, yada yada yada. At the end of the day, this movie is quite funny, and that is the purpose of comedy. What This Is 40 lacks in narrative consistency, it more than makes up for in genuinely funny dialogue and gags. I wouldn't say that it's a bad movie, but I would say that it had so much potential that it didn't live up to. If the plot had been more consistent, the standout performances and comedic writing really could have made something quite good. Instead, we're left with something that is just slightly north of middling. All of that being said, if you're looking for some laughs, this movie is probably worth your time, and I would recommend at least checking it out while it's on Netflix.